Hey, Mitch.
Oh, hey, Ed, what's up?
Hey, can you believe it's been 40 years since Star Trek 2 was released?
Oh, I'm a huge Trekkie. I love Star Trek too.
Oh, me too. I think it's awesome. And I certainly wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of this. I know.
Cool.
Well, the Wrath of Korn.
No, Khan.
Korn.
Khan.
Korn.
Khan.
That doesn't make any sense. It's a Wrath of Korn. Besides, you don't want to make this thing angry.
Why? It's just a stupid vegetable. What could it possibly do?
I wouldn't do that if I was you. Hi, this is Ed Dollister.
This is Mitch Halleck.
And welcome to another exciting episode of Mitch and Ed's Excellent Adventure. If it's your first time here, thanks for stopping by. If you are a regular viewer, thank you so much for coming back. We've got a great show for you today with a classic Star Trek movie that sort of reinvigorated the franchise. But before we begin, what can you do to find out a little bit more about our show and what we've got in store, Mitch?
Oh, Ed, it is easy as inserting the Genesis device into the center of a dead planet and bringing it back to life. All you have to do is hit the subscribe button right down there, and you'll be notified when Mitch and Ed go on another excellent adventure. And why not hit the like button to say, I like to live long and prosper with Mitch and Ed. Star Trek II, baby, the Wrath of Khan.
That's right. The Wrath of Khan. It came out in 1982, and it was sort of a make or break film for the Star Trek franchise. If people at my wife Kelly's going, how come you're doing Star Trek 2 and not Star Trek the motion picture? And you know what? We will get to Star Trek I like the Star Trek the motion picture.
Yeah, I do.
The director's
too.
cut is fantastic, and we'll probably talk about that at some other point. But
Well, let's start with the best and work our way down.
I think that's good. I think that's a good idea. Star Trek 2. So basically, Star Trek the motion picture came out in 1979. It made money. The visual effects were fantastic by Douglas Trumbull. The music was great, but it was rather long. And how can we say this politely? Some people found it a little bit boring.
Yeah, I saw it in the theaters on Christmas Day.
Yes.
And my dad fell asleep, and my buddy was like bored out of his mind, and I was loving it because I grew up loving Star Trek. But even I had to yeah, the ship looked nice.
Yep.
But even the fact that they didn't have the original music bugged me when I saw it. I was like, hey, what's this theme song? This isn't the original Star Trek theme song. What are those outfits they have on? They're horrible. So I got to admit, I was a little skeptical when Star Trek 2 came about, but I'm going to tell you the trailer for this movie sold it because I remember being in the theater with my dad and we saw, I think it was Raiders because that was 81.
Yes.
And Raiders played forever. And they showed the trailer for this movie. And it was like, in the whole galaxy, there's one man who is the source of revenge or something like that. And it's William Shatner silhouetted. You didn't see who it was yet. And they cut to Ricardo Montalban doing that speech. It's like, from hell's heart, I stab at thee. I will chase him around the moons of whatever. And then slowly it got the reveal that it was Kirk. And it said, James T. Kirk. And they said, join him for I think they said a faithful mission of the Enterprise. I can't remember the exact dialogue, but it was one of those real dramatic, Don Fontaine, like Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, this summer at a theater near you. And my dad said, let's go see that because it looks so cool, this whole revenge story. And, Ricardo Montalban was obviously a fixture on TV and movies, so you knew who he was. And yeah, it really got people excited again to see a Star Trek movie after the big, long, over-bloated Star Trek the motion picture. So, yeah.
That's exactly what it did. It reinvigorated the franchise, and it was sort of a bit of a make or break thing. They, it wasn't a debacle. Star Trek again.
No, it
motion
wasn't.
Picture. It did well.
It didn't make no fans. Let's just say that it wasn't making fans.
And I think it lacked the spirit of the original series, and I think that's what the producers and Paramount thought when the film had come out. you know,
It didn't
how
have a
can
real
we?
good villain.
No,
It was almost
that's
like an episode of the old show. It was like the Nomad episode where there was like this probe that came back from outer space that was looking to find its creator, which is kind of like what happened in the movie. So you're
Mhm.
like, I kinda saw this already, and and they rushed the movie. There was a strike, and I can't remember all the details, but they didn't get to finish it in time. And Robert Wise, brilliant director, didn't really get to do the version he wanted. The effects were rushed because they literally put that movie out. I mean, from I've heard stories that the film was still dripping wet from being in the dissolve, the processor and all that. They're
yes.
trying to get the reels of film out to the theaters in time because Paramount had so much money invested in this Star Trek picture that they
Again, you know, and
couldn't see
because
it.
of pretty much Star Wars, you know,
Star
they were going to
Wars.
do Star
Yeah.
Trek Phase 2, the TV series that ended
Yep.
up being
Yep.
scrapped, and then they fast tracked Star Trek the motion picture, you know, came
Mhm.
out 2 years later. A huge film, 3 hours, you know, close to 3 hours. It's a long epic.
Yeah.
And after it did well, but not so well, basically the
No.
producers said, okay, how can we make Star Trek for cheaper? So they spoke to Harv Bennett. This
Well, no, go back a bit.
oh
Gene
yeah, sure.
Roddenberry, he had an idea for a Star Trek 2
Oh,
sequel, which
now
had
is this, hang on, is this, I bet you didn't know this about Star Trek 2. Go for it.
the fact that he wanted them to go back in time to stop the Kennedy assassination.
I had
And in
that
his
as
story,
yes.
and in his story, at the end, Mr. Spock becomes the trigger man and actually pulls the trigger and kills Kennedy because they can't stop time. And they were like, "What? No, we're not having Mr. Spock kill John F. Kennedy. Get the hell out of here." So they conveniently made Gene Roddenberry what they call a suitcase producer, where they gave him a lot of money and they put his name up on the credits and they said, "We'll see you later." And now they bring in Harv Bennett,
Yep.
who had a track record of TV show. I think he even was involved with The Man from Atlantis, wasn't he? Maybe that was one of the shows.
That sounds vaguely familiar. If you want to watch a little bit about the man from Atlantis, click up here. Or just
Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, Roddenberry was out of the picture. They brought in Harv Bennett. They said, "Look, we got to make this, we got to make it, lean, get it under production, get it on time, get it on schedule. You can't fool around with this stuff." So
and
they went and
essentially,
did it.
like Star Trek, I think it cost $42 million, the
Yeah, it was
motion picture.
pricey.
And Harv Bennett said, I can make 4 Star Trek films on that for that
Pretty
budget.
much.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they came in, I think, about 11 or $12 million for the budget of Star Trek 2. As a result, they had to do some cost cutting. So they had to
Yeah.
reuse sets. They reused some shots from Star
Yep.
Trek the motion picture. Their uniforms were dyed a different color. This is the first time we see the fantastic costume design with those wonderful, blood red tunics.
Yeah, they had that
and
nice
the
tea coat.
turtlenex.
Yeah, with the flap over there. Yeah, like it was more military looking.
It was that, and that's one thing that
pajamas.
Gene
Yeah.
Roddenberry didn't really like. He was trying to move away from that militaristic sort of thing, whereas the director and the writers wanted to embed the story with a little bit more of it being like a naval adventure, a bit like a Horatio.
Yeah,
Hornblower
submarine
style.
battle. Yeah, yeah.
So you
yeah,
got
that's
that, you got that really high tech whistle that you see the
Yeah,
bosun
when they pipe them,
using.
yeah, the Bozeman whistle. Yep.
Yes, and things like that. So they reused a lot of the sets. It was difficult to film against. So basically, what
Yeah,
they did is they sliced it up and redressed it so they could move things around.
Yeah.
They reused a lot of. Did you know that Kirk's apartment was also Spock's apartment, just redressed? They did a lot of things where they reused things, but to be honest,
I know the Millennium Falcon's in that scene.
Well, I didn't know that.
In one of the buildings in the background of San Francisco, the Millennium Falcon is stood on its side and lit, and it's one of the apartment buildings.
Well, okay. I bet you
Somewhere
didn't
in
know that the backdrop,
Mhm.
when Kirk is looking
Wait.
out his, sorry,
Logan's Run.
no, the towering inferno when looking out.
I did not know that. I
So
thought you were gonna say
they
the-
used that, and then they used they put some like higher tech, more modern buildings in the front, but they use that as the main backdrop.
I bet you didn't know. That's
What?
the subject. That's the title of this show. Bet
Yeah,
you
it
didn't
is.
know this about Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. That the opening scene where Kirk and Spock are walking down the hall after they just do the Kobayashi Maru test,
Yes.
you'll see this large globe structure in the foreground and this other sculpture. That's not there. That's not on a set. That's actually forced perspective. They just filmed those two actors on a stage, and there's just like they did with a map painting. The director of photography literally just picked up like this mouse and put it in the like that
Yep.
real up close. So it kind of gave that look of a big sculptured piece, but in reality, it was a little tiny globe like this. It was just altered on the film.
I
So
did not know that. I did not know that.
Yeah, that's
So-
why we're calling it there.
So with Harv Bennett on board, they got the original cast. I know that William Shatner was, a bit concerned about playing a like an older character. He was
Yeah.
actually, I think he was 50 at the time, and it's
Yeah.
quite funny. The whole story is about, I suppose, aging and you, among many other things, but your usefulness and what is your use by date. No, it was funny because I watched it the day after my 52nd birthday last week to recap, and Captain Kirk is actually having his 52nd birthday in the series, and there's basically he was convinced by director Nicholas Meyer about, no, we can show you how you can age gracefully, and they had little nods to it with his glasses and not being able to see, and all those sort of taking him a desk, he's really taking a desk job at the moment, and you see after the events of Star Trek the Motion Picture that the crew are not all together. You've got Chekhov on the USS Reliant.
Grissom. No, the Grissom.
No, he's on the Reliant.
Oh, I'm sorry. I jumped ahead. The Grissom Star Trek 3. You're right.
Yes,
he's
that's
on
okay.
the Reliant.
The script, it was essentially leaked that Spock was going to die in it, because this was really the only way to get Leonard Nimoy back if he could die. And then there was hate mail sent to Paramount saying about this. So Nicholas Meyer then leaked back a few things that, well, he might die, he might survive, and everything like that. But what they did is
before the internet, which is crazy.
Yes.
This is back in the early 80s. They don't have an internet then. This is just word of mouth.
Things were getting stolen from that set all the time, ID passes and things like that. So what they did during the Kobayashi Maru test at the start is they killed off Spock.
An explosion
in the explosion in it, so that the audience, when they go see it for the first time, will go, that's what it was. It was just a test.
I remember the audience, because I saw it on opening day. I went and see it, and I remember the audience laughing at the line because William Shatner, Captain Kirk, comes into the room and Spock's laying there on the ground after they just the simulation, and he gets up and goes, "Aren't you dead?" And the audience laughed because all the fanboys back then, we'd all lurk around the comic book shops and the comic book conventions and the day sci-fi conventions, and that's how we all talked. Literally it was word of mouth, and we all knew, in Starlog magazine it says he's going to die, so we all kind of knew that. And then when you hear it was fake, you kind of did that, it was just a ruse, a misdirection type of thing. So they were playing into the leaks and such that were abound at the time. So
so as you said earlier, the thing that Harv Bennett thought of is that Star Trek the Motion Picture didn't have a main villain, and he had never really seen any Star Trek. He thought that film was boring, so what he did is he watched all 79 episodes of Star Trek the original series, and one thing that stuck to him was Ricardo Montalban as Khan Noonien Singh in The Space Seed, which is a great episode. And he thought, I wonder if we can get Ricardo Montalban back to play this character. And thankfully did. He did an amazing job as Khan, and it was a good tie-in, but you didn't necessarily need to know, the history too much. You just knew that there was history between Kirk. Did you know that you probably did, but when you think back to the film, you go, there's so much interaction between Khan and Kirk, but they actually never share a scene together. They're all on view screens because Ricardo Montalban was so busy with Fantasy Island. So he had to basically film all his scenes separately. But you sort of think, no, they're together. But they're not.
No, there was one draft where there was going to be some like a side battle between Kirk and Khan, like in like this mental telepathy. I don't know how you're going to describe it, but it was almost this otherworldly thing where their consciousness were fighting each other. I don't know what they were going to do with that story. They threw that out. They were like, no, but that was one plot line at one point that Kirk and Khan were supposed to fight in this mental plane of, I don't know
Yes.
what the hell it was. So yeah.
I'm glad they decided to just do it like submarine warfare instead. I think
Yeah, yeah.
it worked out
Did
really
you know
yeah.
did you know that Ricardo Montalban was a famed actor, of course, but he was also a brilliant dancer. But just like William Shatner, he was a huge horseman and he rode horses and he had a terrible fall from a horse and it injured his leg and stuff. And he would walk with a cane. And a lot of his scenes are filmed with him sitting down because he had a lot of trouble walking. And then years later, he would digress and go into a wheelchair. So towards the end of his career, he was mostly, wheelchair bound and didn't move around. So that might have also played into the fact
Mm.
that they didn't have a physical, fight back and forth because he had some troubles with his legs.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I did know that a lot of people thought that his chest, because he's famous for his chest, was fake, was a
Yeah.
prosthetic, but it was
No,
real.
that was 100% pure Montalban, rich Corinthian leather. Was that those pecs? No, he was in shape. He was one
Oh,
of those
yes.
deals. I mean, he wasn't like Arnold Schwarzenegger, steroided out. He was just a guy that kept in shape, and that was his real pecs, and that
Yep.
was him. He was hot.
Oh yeah, that's right. Well, that's how it is on SETI Alpha 5. It was a pretty hot and stormy place.
Yeah.
It's
Make
a
sure
great.
it's not SETI Alpha 6 because we all know SETI Alpha blew up and it
Or was that
shifted the
SETI, or
orbit of the
did
planet.
SETI Alpha
Or
4
SETI
blow
Alpha
up?
4. Yeah, one of them blew up, and that's why I'm thinking, with all your technology aboard the Reliant, you're a science vessel, you're trying to find. You didn't notice that this the wrong planet, but hey, things
Well,
happen.
the other major gaffe in Star Trek 2 is that Chekhov never
Was not.
actually
Yeah,
met.
Walter Koenig wasn't on the series at that point,
No,
and
he
he took
wasn't.
a lot of
So he
medical
never
damage.
actually met Khan in the episode, and they've said basically that I think they've tried to retcon it a little bit that
I heard a
maybe.
story that they came up with. Have you about the bathroom?
Oh, that's what Walter Koenig I think said to. Do you want to share that
Yeah,
one?
the story is because, yeah, you're right. The actors were never on the show at the same time, so they never could see each other. Because Khan says the line, "Mr. Chekhov, I never forget a face."
Yes.
The story that they came up with is that he would tell on the con circuit, not the con, but the comic convention circuit, sci-fi conventions, is that Khan had to use the facilities or the men's room, and Chekhov was in there as well, and he had like a bad case of diarrhea or whatever, and he was trying to get in there to use the toilet, and they had a scuffle, so he finally gets in there to use it, and he just looked at him and said, I'll never forget your face, Mr. Chekhov and such. So that's
But
why they came
I
up with
think
their own backstory about how
yeah, they also said that Chekhov was working like the night shift or whatever on
yeah.
or in security, and they met during that time, and they basically Kirk was impressed, and that's why. But you know what? I was just during it doesn't really matter, but during the episode of the Space Seed, he goes to have Khan looks at all the systems and is reading everything about the ship. Odds
Right.
are he, with his superior intellect during the
the eugenic wars
the
on
eugenic
the Earth?
wars,
Yeah.
with his superior intellect, I'm sure he probably memorized everyone that was on that
The
ship,
crew manifest.
the crew, and then go,
Yeah.
that's why I remember you. I think,
Sure, that sounds plausible.
it does. It's more
Or
plausible
what
than
else it could have been, Ed?
what?
It was in the script.
Okay, yes,
That's
it could. Yes, true.
Anyway,
So-
back to Star Trek. We also introduced some new characters played by Kirstie Alley, who was
Yes.
on board. She was half Romulan, half Vulcan. Though I don't think they ever mentioned she's.
They didn't. They did that in
Romulan.
deleted scenes. That's why you saw her
okay,
cry at
yeah.
the end of.
Yeah, because I was like, why is a Vulcan crying? And then I'm like, well, she's got half, Romulan and such. So
Yeah, so she was a little bit more emotional. That's why she did a few things. She was shocked when she saw.
you mean Scotty's nephew?
Yeah, Scotty's nephew. Yeah, when you saw him, who I remember from now, wasn't he from Escape from Witch Mountain?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
The Disney. He also looks a lot like Haley Joel, not Haley Joel Osment. James Earl Haley, the guy I'm thinking
Oh
of
yes,
with the
Jackie.
Jackie Earl Haley. He looks
Yes,
like that a little bit too. But no, you're right.
they were child actors around the same
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
but
Because
yeah, it
he was
wasn't
kind of short.
again
Yeah,
deleted scene. It wasn't explained that that was his nephew, but you did find out, and that's why Kirstie Alley's character was a
yeah,
little shocked when he brought him in to
yeah,
when he never
yeah. She was.
ran
Yeah,
away.
when the door
Yeah.
opens and Scotty's carrying his hurt body there. Yeah,
Did
yeah.
you know that well, Star Trek 2, we alluded to it earlier, had many different titles. It was originally going to
Yeah.
be War of the
Vengeance.
Generations. It was going to be
Yeah.
subtitled
The
The
Undiscovered
Genesis.
Country.
Yeah,
Was one.
which Nicholas Meyer, the director, obviously went on to direct Star
Number
Trek
6. Yeah.
6, The
No, he
Undiscovered
didn't.
Country.
Oh yeah, he was there. I'm
He
sorry.
also it was also going to be called Star Trek 2 The Vengeance of Khan, but they
Right.
changed that because around that time there was Revenge of the Jedi coming out, and they thought,
Yeah.
no, we don't want to have that get confused with
Yeah,
Star
stupid
Trek
space
Star Wars.
pictures get revenge. It'll confuse people because they're stupid. So
Yeah.
we'll change it, Mr. Lucas. And then what's George Lucas do?
Change it.
Return
But
of the
that's okay. I
Jedi.
think the Wrath of Khan is a lot better
Yeah.
than the Vengeance of Khan. Sort of
Grapes of Wrath of Khan. Yeah.
yeah, it's a bit
Sounds
more.
good.
It's a bit more theatrical. The Wrath.
It
I
does.
think.
It sounds like, Crystal Skull, that type of thing.
I think
like
so. I quite
yeah,
like it.
like very dramatic type of thing.
Did you know that
Yes.
most of Khan's people back on SETI Alpha 5, when obviously the Botany Bay was there was their planet
Yeah.
blew up, his wife
Yes.
from the episode, they were going to get her back. Unfortunately, the original actress was suffering from MS, so
I
she
did
wasn't
not know
able
that.
to reprise
I
her
always
role. But
wondered why I thought they just wrote her off to, as part of
well,
the
they
story.
did say that my wife was killed by the SETI eels,
Eel.
that
Yeah.
that they did. But did you know most of his crew, the Khan's crew, were Chippendales?
Really?
Correct.
I did not know. I could tell you this.
Yeah.
I know that one of them went on to be in a lot of science fiction movies. It was Judson Scott. The thing of it is, you wouldn't know because he's not credited in the entire movie because his agent said, "No, we won't. We don't want to take a credit in this one." But he was Joaquin. He was Khan's number one.
Yes,
like,
he does look
the
familiar.
superior.
He always appeared as
Yeah,
a
that's
bad
him.
guy.
He was in the Phoenix. He was like in a ton of like deep. What was it? Sequest and all that stuff. He was in the 80s a lot and a lot of sci-fi show. Judson Scott, but he is not credited at all in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
Even though he's got a good part.
Oh, he's got a
Agent
great
said,
part.
Yeah. Big
I
mistake there.
I love that scene from SETI Alpha 5 with the SETI eels that go into the ear. I know that they in the original cut they had to change it a little bit because it looked so gross when it was coming out.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's a great, I don't know if you've got Cinema Fantastic.
I remember Cinema. Yes, I do have those.
This
Yes.
is this was a double cover because they used to have Blade Runner on one version and this is the Star Trek 2, but they've got a great shot in here. But can you see how they did a giant?
Yeah, they made a giant mold of Walter Koenig's ear.
Yeah.
And they just, it was this little puppet. That's how they pulled it off. Yeah.
With some fantastic, and I bet you didn't know this. Maybe you did. That Paramount patented the design for the SETI eels for a toy.
Patented.
Oh, well, we say patented.
Well, you say a lot of weird things in Australia, but yeah, kids wanted to have a toy of that. Hey,
well,
kids,
they didn't do anything with it,
thing
but
in
they
your
did patent
ear.
the idea.
Oh, well, I'm glad they didn't get the patent for that one.
Anyways, and I suppose the main thing, I mean, the wonderful thing about Star Trek 2 is the acting. Look, the acting is fantastic. I think it's got some of the best acting in any Star Trek.
It does
film.
actually. No. And you said earlier, like I saw this when I was a kid. I saw this 82, so I had to be like 14 years old. Saw it with my dad, and it works on a lot of levels. I'm going to tell you, it works as a cool adventure.
Yeah,
like you said, like a submarine versus a ship type of like a Hunt for Red October. Even though that'll be years. Run silent, run deep. is what
Yes.
I'm thinking. And there was also an old Star Trek episode where they fought the Romulans for the first time and they couldn't, it was like they were feeling each other out. It was this whole naval battle thing, you know. So it works on that level. It's a good action movie. If you don't even know Star Trek, you can walk into this movie and figure out what's going on and enjoy the picture. But on all the other levels too, like you said at the end when Kirk's realizing how he's old, and then we can jump to the end because I feel young. He gets that new lease on life, and you know he loses his friend and all that stuff there too. So as an older viewer now, I watch that movie with different eyes and go, oh,
Yeah.
you know, he's not out to pasture. He's not like done for. He's got, you know, years left ahead of him. He's still useful, you know,
Yes.
and that plays into the whole rebirth type of thing of Genesis, which is, you know, life from death, as they say in the movie.
It is,
So
and
that works.
we should point out the amazing CGI sequence by ILM rather, and
Early
I suppose
Pixar.
Pixar,
Yeah.
correct? The for the Genesis project, which was this amazing fractally
Yeah.
generated which still looks, you know, it's quite
No, it looks good to
amazing
this
for the
day. No, but
time.
I remember seeing that in the movies. Like, how did they do that? Because it was
Yeah.
like it was animated, but it did look animated, you know. But yeah, that
Mm.
was all new technology back in the day. And we didn't get the rest of the cast their credit. Paul Winfield, who I knew from a movie called Sounder with Cicely
Okay.
Tyson that I saw in the 70s. It's a family, they have a dog and all that stuff. But Paul Winfield plays Tyrell, which I always think of Blade Runner because Tyrell Corporation
Yes.
was the name of the place that made the replicants. And I'm like, is that a coincidence that they named Captain Tyrell? I don't know. I mean, same year, same stuff. Who knows?
Yeah.
So he was the captain of the Reliant. And also on his crew, I was going to say there was another actor, but I'm jumping ahead to one of the other Star Trek movies down the road. Some of the crew members there. I'm thinking of Christian Slater, but he doesn't show up till number 6.
That's correct.
But Bibi Besh, who's an actress that they picked to play Dr. Carol Marcus, creator
Yes.
of the Genesis device, who was also Kirk's love interest from years ago, and also the mother of his child that we
Yes.
find out was played by Bibiana Besh. That's her full name. Did you know she came from Austria, came over with her family, and acted early on in her career, went to the Connecticut School of Women College right here in New London, Connecticut, and is also the mother of actress Samantha Mathis. There you go. And she's also a great actress. She was on other things. She also played the mother of Janine Turner's character on Northern Exposure years later on. Unfortunately, she passed away at age 56 from breast cancer, I believe, but she was a very nice addition to the Star Trek cast. Unfortunately, never comes back, though. They don't bring her back for Star Trek 3. They don't bring her back for 4. They don't even really mention her again. And sadly, too, Merritt, obviously, when you look at Star Trek 2, most of this cast, I hate to say it, has passed away, except for like 3 people, except for Kirk, Chekhov, and Sulu, and Kirstie Alley. Everybody else has passed on. I mean, years earlier, Paul Winfield died years ago. Bibi Besh died. Merritt Buttrick, I believe his name was one of the earlier AIDS victims at the time too. He was on a show called Square Pegs with Sarah Jessica Parker. He was the star of that. It was about these nerdy kids in high school. And I remember him from that. He was this big, tall, blonde guy that wore these sunglasses. And he actually does appear on an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, season 1, as this drug-addicted colonist or something like that. And this planet was addicting their population with drugs. He comes on. He's also on Star Trek one more time before he passes away. But a nice young actor, you know, did a terrific job as playing David. You know, Marcus, Kirk's son there. That was another addition to the thing. You know, the Kirk that he had a family. You know, you never thought of Captain Kirk with anybody more than one episode. You know, he's jumping from bed to bed, but no, he actually had a love interest. So that was kind of cool to find out too, you know.
And of course, we had the amazing ending where Spock, spoiler alert, does die by saving the ship. Actually, I'll just quickly go back. You know, the Reliant, how it looks quite different to the Enterprise. The main reason for that is when Harve Bennett okayed the design of it, he was actually looking at it upside down, and that's why the nacelles are on the bottom as opposed to the top. But the other reason is they wanted a way to how can you make it look like the audience can tell the difference between the two ships, I think,
because actually in the script they were the same ships.
Yeah.
They were both the same Constitution class ships. They had to change that in special effects. But if you read the actual script, they're like, oh no, they're the same class of ships. So
and that is such a great in that nebula, and you've got when the when the lasers nebula are shooting that, and there's some spectacular visual effects that still hold up today. An amazing job by ILM, as you would expect.
Oh, and I got to tell you too, when this movie got released overseas, over in England, I know it got a 15 rating because of the violence. When they beam down to the planet to look for Carol Marcus and the rest of them, and they find her crew dead. There's a lot of blood and such, when they find
there was actually on the
in the hanging bodies. Split. Yeah. Regular One, the space station. Did you know the space station Regular One was the same model they used in Star Trek: The Motion Picture,
but just flipped upside down? Yeah, I did know that.
More money that way.
Yeah.
See, and the whole shot of the ship leaving dry dock was just repurposed from Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
And the same with his Kirk shuttle when there was approaching them, they did. But I mean,
and did you know that whole effect with the Mutara Nebula was just a big fish tank full of water with some
Spock.
And
he's already dead. He's already dead.
That's all. He's dead already. That's how they got all the cloud effect in there.
Yeah,
was just they just poured like milky.
They were pretty good with those ink tanks back then. I think they, before.
No, but they used that effect somewhat. They kind of used that in Raiders Lost Ark. No, Raiders Lost Ark when they have
when he's opening the clouds.
Yeah, the demons that come out of the Ark of the Covenant, they just pull them through water and you get that like effect with everything. And they also use it in Poltergeist, which is going to come out as well.
Same year. 82 was a good year.
No, those guys at ILM, they were cooking, man.
They were. And of course we had
Star Trek. Wait, Star Trek was the first time ILM worked on an outside movie other than Star Wars. They were like hired out.
Well, no, because they worked on Raiders of the Lost Ark.
No, but outside of Lucasfilm.
Okay, gotcha. Just clarifying. We'll get emails otherwise.
No. They got hired to work outside of Lucasfilm.
Yeah.
And that was the first project they did.
So let's go before we go to merchandise and things like that, and how it went. The ending, of course, is with the death of Spock, where he basically saves the ship, but is mortally wounded. And
did you know about Khan's baby?
Oh no, I heard something about Khan's baby.
No, there's. Did you know there's scenes they filmed of the small child walking around the Reliant or something? They just cut that all out of the movie. They're like, let's not get into this. But there's a scene when the Genesis device is overheating in the transporter room. It's about to go out. There's a scene, this little kid in these ragged clothes who looks like he's some Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome type of thing, or the feral kid walking towards it. Khan's baby is like walking towards that explosion. I don't know what they were thinking about that. Like, well, yeah, we're going to have Khan have a baby. Not him physically, but obviously like
he could do it. He could do
his offspring from his wife. But yeah, I'm like, good thing they kind of threw that story out, because then you're kind of like, well, Kirk's blown up a ship with a little kid on board. That's kind of dark, But anyway, yes, they threw that scene in there. But Leonard Nimoy, who wanted a death scene, actually had second thoughts when they were filming it and said, maybe I don't want to get killed off. Maybe
so let's do this with McCoy. Let's do this little remember, which gives him a little bit of an out. But certainly after the fact, when test audiences, they decided to film an additional scene on the Genesis planet, which was actually filmed in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco with the torpedo tube, or the
Mark IV torpedo,
with Spock in it, which gave them obviously this, Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. But that's a fantastic scene with that. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one.
Yeah.
It's quite an emotional scene there with just because they can't get to each other between that plexiglass.
I'll tell you, that plexiglass thing bugs me now, because years later, if you watch it, there's seams in between the glass. Like, wait a minute, if there's radiation, you could go right out through that little crack there. But anyway, I know it takes away from it. But every time I watch it, though, I notice there's a seam in between the two things. You know what else I noticed when I watched that scene? The
Mhm.
background extra, who's
Oh,
way overacting.
okay. There's one
Know what
who
I'm
just
talking
is
about?
there to hold back Kirk, I think, and then he just leaves, which is quite funny.
No, there's that. But when they're doing the whole, I have been and always shall be your friend. When they're doing that little scene between the two of them, look behind Kirk, and
Okay.
there's an engineer in a white jumpsuit like Scotty has, and he's just like doing this like, oh, I'm so hurt, I'm overheated. He's really distracting,
Acting.
upstaging.
I've never
I
I've been
noticed
just
it.
so focused on the two actors. I've never noticed him.
No. I'm telling you, watch that scene again. And once I point that out, you can't get your eyes off. And you're like, did someone not tell this guy to stop upstaging the main actors? Because let me tell you, I was good at upstaging when I used to do plays years ago. I got yelled at all the time by the directors because I'd be the background guy and I would be doing something. It's like, will you
You're
stop
that
upstaging
guy.
something? I'm that guy. Look at me, everybody. Forget the leads. Look at me.
Maybe you could find him out and get him as a guest at Terrificon.
I could. So there you go.
So
And did you know they did not want to play Amazing Grace at the end?
No, and that's where James Doohan suggested, what about
Scotty with bagpipe.
Yeah, playing it on bagpipes. So he's not actually playing it. But yeah. But yeah.
No, but yeah, that wasn't part of the original scene. Because they're like, you're not gonna do that, are you? So yeah. And then when Kirk gets choked up, what he does, of all the souls I've ever encountered, his was the most human. That for Clem thing, I used that in a communications class doing a speech in college. William Shatner acting. I gotta admit, Shatner, who gets bashed all the time for like being overacting himself and his delivery and the way his cadence is, this is probably his best performance out of all the things I've seen him in. This Star Trek 2 is probably the best performance as Captain Kirk anyway.
Yep, I agree. And I know that James Doohan wanted to thought that Ricardo Montalban should have got an Academy Award nomination for his role
as well
as Khan. He is very good. They're so committed. And again, when you're acting against nothing, essentially, it's pretty amazing. So the film came out. It did big numbers. It was hugely successful. It didn't make as much as Star Trek the Motion Picture, but it was more profitable because it costs less to make. But surprisingly, after Mego had the license for Star Trek the Motion Picture, there were no toys.
Nothing. No comic books.
I've got this. Okay. So I thought I'll do my due diligence and have a look through. And it goes from Star Trek the Motion Picture to Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, where Ertl brought out the toys. There wasn't anything. There was the novelization, which was a bestseller by Vonda McIntyre.
Back to Vonda McIntyre, yeah.
There were some books. There were some
Marvel. I was going to say Marvel did an ongoing series after Star Trek the Motion Picture came out. There was even a newspaper Star Trek comics strip in the papers. But when Star Trek 2 came, everyone had gotten burned so much from Star Trek merchandise not selling, like Happy Meal toys and all that stuff. They didn't want it. So there's nothing for Star Trek 2. There's maybe, like you show the novelization, the soundtrack, I don't believe even came out originally. It was like years later. James Horner. I think that's James Horner's first movie.
It's his first major score. There's an ad for the score.
Yeah. Yep.
Atlantic Records and Cassettes. So it did come out.
Yeah.
But there was nothing. They have now brought out years later they brought out a lot of things. Currently Mego have got out Kirk and Spock from Star Trek 2. I was going to try and buy one for the show, but I couldn't find one in time.
I sent you a picture the other day. Funko, of course, Funko. They've got Khan from the Space Seed, the old episode, but Playmates, when they were doing the line of action figures, when they did Star Trek Next Generation, all that, they did Wrath of Khan figures, because I remember they had the open-chested Khan, and they've redone it since. I mean, it's
They've
not
got
just
they've got some coming out. I think it's like Star
yeah.
Trek, not Legends or whatever, but they've brought out Khan, Spock, and Kirk from
Mhm.
Star Trek 2, which come out in
I
October,
think
November, I think
October,
this
yeah,
year.
right around now, yeah, yeah.
And going back to Funko, they also brought out they've got like a Funko movie scene of the Kirk and Spock death
The
with the
glass, yeah,
plexiglass.
yeah, in the room.
I don't know
I'll
if there's
tell you
any
one thing.
gaps.
No, but there's been a couple of versions of that soundtrack because it didn't have everything originally. I just saw one came out, I think in 2015 or so. It had a more complete version of all the soundtrack. Plus, talk about complete version. When this aired on TV on ABC, just like they used to do with Superman, there's a lot of deleted scenes that ran for television that were not included in any of the VHS or the Blu-ray or the Laserdisc and stuff. I do believe the latest version that's come out now, there's a 4K, I think,
Yes.
out there, has everything. Finally has all the deleted scenes we talked about with Kirstie Alley and Spock and Kirk, and there was some other stuff because I remember watching it on TV and you go, oh, that's new. Oh, that scene's different. Oh, look, and sometimes it's just a different take. Sometimes it's just a different angle of the same scene, same dialogue, but it's maybe a close-up shot as opposed to a wide shot, and little subtle things. But there was some more to it.
Yeah, and it's a really it's I think Star Trek 2 is a great if you're not a Star Trek fan, you can still enjoy it. It's some of the ones that get a little bit into the minutiae and all those where you go, oh, I've got to see. It's a bit like sometimes the Marvel films where you can't enjoy it unless you've seen a bazillion other things.
Well, you talk about I was going to say, talk about not enjoying it. Star Trek Into Darkness, the second J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie, is a really wrong course remake of this movie. I don't know what they were thinking about.
Yeah, with Benedict Cumberbatch as
Benedict Cumberbatch, like having a big secret. Oh, is he really going to be Khan Noonien Singh? I don't know why they bothered. I don't know why they made him Khan. He looks nothing. Well, he doesn't have to look him, but there was nothing about the Ricardo Montalban character. They kind of combined the episode of Space Seed from the original show with the Wrath of Khan in one movie where they find him and they find out that he's got all these people that escaped, and there was this war coming with Peter Weller. He wanted to have this type of guy because they needed somebody that was ruthless to help fight the Klingons or whatever they were going to do. It was all over the place, and at the end they do the whole remake, except instead of Spock dying, it's Kirk dying, and they even do the whole needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and Chris Pine as Kirk sacrifices himself, and in one of the worst deliveries ever, Zach Quinto loses his crap as he's fighting Benedict Cumberbatch, and they tell him Kirk does it, come on, and he does that like Shatner, but there's no drama to it. It's pathetic. No. It's actually one of the worst parts of the movie. You almost cringe. You go, why? Why'd you do this? So if you want to see a good version of Star Trek 2, watch Star Trek 2. Do not watch the other Into Darkness, because it's like, I don't even know what they were thinking when they go, we're going to remake Star Trek, The Wrath of Khan. Why? So, but anyway, I think, and Ricardo Montalban, you mentioned too, I think he really enjoyed this whole new audience that opened up to him. Because
again, he was super popular at the time with Fantasy Island. They did a little robot that they brought onto the set with the face of Tattoo.
I saw that. Yeah,
which was pretty funny. So, if you're able to get the 4K version when it comes out, by all the digital bits, I think I've got a review on it saying it's spectacular. It's the definitive version, but it's on streaming. There's still there's the Blu-ray director's cut that is still available that you can get. And it's a fantastic movie. It's just, it's got everything. So I certainly would recommend it. It was a bumper year in 1982, and it is at the top or close to the top of what was released that year. You know what, Mitch? We've got lots of films from 1982 that we've been looking at, but how can you find out a little bit more about those shows if you're not sure what to do?
Oh, Ed, it is just as easy as firing a proton torpedo into the Mutara Nebula, using your gut instinct and blowing something up. All you got to do is press the subscribe button down below, and you can go check it out. Or, as Ed just mentioned, we already have a bunch of shows there. Go to our page and go search through Blade Runner, The Last Starfighter,
E.T.
E.T., Tron. We're like the 80s embodiment. If you saw in the 80s, it's on our show. Plus, we even go back in the 70s and look at the great disaster movies. We look at Jaws. We look at Star Wars and everything else that's back in the 70s as well. So what are you doing watching us? Go check out the rest of Mitch and Ed's Excellent Adventures, all available right now on YouTube. Subscribe, like us, notify yourself, beam yourself on board, do whatever you feel like doing it.
That's right. And if you've got a suggestion, like this was a suggestion for a show, write it in the comments below. We always read all your comments, and we really appreciate you watching and being part of the show as well. So signing off. This is Mr. Dollister, I should say, if we're going like Mr. Savick.
We want to have
that. This is Ed Dollister.
And this is Yeoman Mitch Halleck. Yo, man.
Yo, man. I knew you were going to go there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.